Good afternoon and welcome to Philanthropy Impact's Walk in My Shoes series for professional advisors. Today's discussion is focused on catalysing investment in mental health and asking the question, what's next for philanthropy and impact investing? My name is Sophie Sahanek and I'm the Director of Membership and Development here at Philanthropy Impact. And for those of you who are new to us, we are a not-for-profit membership organisation with the mission to increase and improve philanthropy and social investment and to encourage impact investing. This series has been carefully curated to help you navigate the philanthropy and impact investment space and is a core part of our service offering for members. If you'd like to know more about our services and the benefit of membership for you and your firm, then please do get in touch with me directly. I'll either put my email in the chat or it'll be at the end of this video if you're watching the recording. As we keep these discussions strictly to 30 minutes, they do go very quickly, but we encourage audience interaction. Please use the chat to introduce yourselves, have your say and pose questions to our panel. And please make sure to select panel and all attendees or everyone when posting the chat so that all can see. It is now time for me to hand over to Max. Are you ready, Max?
Absolutely, very much so. Thank you very much for letting me in. I'm delighted to be with you this afternoon. And I realized that it's a really short session, right? It's actually, it shouldn't be called walk in my shoes, it's probably called run in my shoes, given the amount of topics that we need to cover. And I'd like to simply kick it off very quickly before I hand over to our wonderful panelists. Just by way of introduction, I mean, why are we holding this session? Of course, kindly because Philanthropy Impact has invited us, but I think also because this issue is extremely timely. I mean, if you look at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on mental health, and first of all, we need to note a disruption, really, in many cases, halting of critical mental health services. There was a recent WHO survey that noted that in 121 out of 130 countries surveyed, that's a lot. These services were impacted. And of course, unfortunately, COVID-19 also compounds the problem, or has been compounding the problem, because there have been additional neurological and mental health complications in many cases. And this from a starting point, which I have to say, and that's the sad news, and we're asking ourselves today, how do we deal with it? How we take a step change forward of a problem that is very widespread. Around the world, 1 billion people suffer from mental health problems. And, I think those of us who know, and statistically many of us do know and have close family or extended family or friends contacts, we know how dramatic, how tragic this is for the sufferers and their families. Implications such as dementia, Alzheimer's, depression, substance abuse, schizophrenia. I mean, there's so many mental health issues. They are a disaster. And I think we should really be, we will talk a lot about the investment case to improve the state of affairs, but let's not lose sight of that. I think that's really important. Talking about human beings, every case is unique and every case is dramatic. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we need to really do better. But if we nevertheless, say, well, at the end of the day, we need to allocate resources to improving the state of affairs, we need to quantify some of this. And, the estimated global mental health costs are roughly $2.5 trillion a year. I know that the French economy hasn't, had much of growth in recent years, but, it's roughly close to the world's 7th largest economy, France. That's simply unacceptable, and I think this is the reason why we're all here today. I am personally convinced that we can do better. And what we'll invite you to do is to join us today to think through how we can actually do better. Fortunately, we have a fantastic panel here. I'm joined, I don't know how it appears on your screen, but on my screen, at least on my virtual right, so to speak, by Natasha Mueller, who is a philanthropist and impact investor with a very extensive footprint work in the mental health space, about which we'll learn more in a second. And on my virtual left, I guess it's not a political left, but it's a virtual left, Brian Heyworth, who is the managing partner of Lansdowne Partners, who has also, a significant exposure and interest in, especially also the impact investing case around mental health. And what we're trying to do here today is to look at both sides, because on the one hand, I think we know that philanthropy at its best puts in motion processes, solutions that can be scaled. It's the true risk capital of society. Financial return minus 100%, social impact enormous if it's well done. On the other hand, we also know, and we just quoted the figure, the 2.5 trillion, it's clear that philanthropy alone won't be able to do the job, right? So we also need to think about how do we influence policy, how do we leverage the market mechanism, and this is where policy work and impact investing comes in. So that's pretty much the brief we've given ourselves today in our, run in your shoes, walk in your shoes kind of session. And what I'd like to do is, basically hand it over very soon to our speakers. I've been, invited to basically run the chat function. I mean, that's what the chair does in a Zoom setting. So I have an eye on the chat. I would encourage you to ask questions simply because we are in a group, of a certain size. It's simply more efficient if you share the questions, and I will then try to aggregate them and put them to our speakers. But before we do that, of course, we need to have a position statement from us, the speakers, in the first round. I know that the philanthropy impact is circulating, also has circulated the bios, so I won't really introduce them. I hope you'll forgive me. It's the length of the session that forces us to do that, but they're both extremely accomplished in their respective fields. So Natasha, maybe we can hear from you first. You've been really a crusader for improving mental health in a variety of roles. Give us an idea of the kind of work that you think can help us achieve this step change. What are some of the lessons learned and some of the activities that you'd like to highlight? And I know, the World Mental Health Day is coming up. Maybe you have something to share on that front as well. Over to Natasha. I'll mute myself.
Oh, thank you, Max. There's a whole pack of information that I could give, so I'm going to try and condense it. But the areas I've been really interested in, my main reason for focusing on mental health is because I think it cuts across every SDG. It's absolutely central to, it's both cause and symptom of development and economic progress. And so we need both mental health to address the SDGs and to meet those targets, and vice versa. I think already before the pandemic, mental health services were woefully inadequate. Funding for it was woefully inadequate. And I think the pandemic has shown an even greater light on the inequality and discrimination and, of course, health that poor mental health has. So some of the work that we're doing at NM Impact, we actually just launched our not-for-profit called Kokoro. And what we're focusing on there is, I guess, 3 different things. We're looking at convening, so bringing together philanthropists or impact investors around this theme, because it's not something that we can do alone. I often use the analogy that it was similar to climate a long time, like 10 years ago. And at the beginning, climate seemed like such an intractable problem. I believe mental health is the same. We need every great thinker involved, researchers, policymakers, as you said, philanthropists, investors, activists, and most importantly, we need people who have lived experience and the youth voice at the table. So we're focusing on convening these different actors and stakeholders together and looking and having discussions as to how mental health cuts across all the different SDGs. And very happy to share a table afterwards, or with anyone who's interested, in the different ways we measured and tracked at how 12 of the 17 SDGs interact with mental health. So I think that's the first thing we do. The second thing we're looking at is around financing. So creating financing mechanisms to make it a bit easier, because it's very difficult to do this, particularly philanthropy. There are, barriers to philanthropic giving. Tax issues, due diligence issues, both for the grantees and the grantors. So we're trying to find systems that make it a little bit easier. And the same with investment. One of the things we're looking at is creating a sort of next wave pledge on mental health. So encouraging philanthropists and investors in other fields of the SDGs to get into mental health. And the last bit that we're doing is simply championing it, championing anyone that's involved in mental health organizations, grassroots, public policy, just elevating those voices so that they have a seat at the table and people are hearing what they have to say. So just to your point about World Mental Health Day, yes, we did this huge activation around it. It was on the 10th of October, and we amplified the World Health Organization official theme, which was mental health in an unequal world. And so we bought some billboards out in Times Square in New York, and then did this huge splash page, which was linked to a website, and listed a whole bunch of organizations on there as to nominated by funders to organizations that we think around the world that are worthy of receiving funds and are doing amazing work.
Thank you very much, Natasha. I mean, I have to say, I admire, the work that you do. And, I know that you also, because I think you know that you're sort of embodiment of that. To clap, it takes two hands. You need to look at the philanthropy and the investment side. What is your view? Because I think this is a question that comes up time and again. In the world of capital markets, of ESG, of SRI, we talk a lot about environmental sustainability, and you pointed out, we have metrics are coming into place in the climate space in particular. How do you see the social sustainability side of things? Do you think we can integrate that, and how? What are some ideas on how to do it? Do you think this is something that investors should and can care about, and what kind of questions could and should they ask?
So I think it's a really good point. ESG is like a major topic, and in the last few years. And I think just on a very basic level, I think focusing on ESG and social sustainability and having that kind of strategy just reflects the enhanced awareness and importance that employees and founders, investors, customers are attaching to social issues and mental health, particularly next gen. It's a major criteria for them. The problem is, as you so rightly pointed out, there aren't that many metrics being developed, but we are getting there. So the Countdown 2030 was just launched, which was an initiative between the Lancet Commission, UNICEF, United for Global Mental Health, which is an organization that I highly admire and I'm a trustee of. And they're working together to do exactly that, to find the different points on metrics that we can look at. WHO has also got this huge atlas, and they just released their latest data, and it's basically but that's more on the policy side, but it's looking at what governments are doing according to their plan from, I think their new plan was 2019 to 2023, and they had some targets. Just FYI, they completely missed the targets from the earlier, from the 2013 to 2019 roadmap. So now they've set these new targets, and the atlas is starting to measure it. There are of course problems with the metrics because it's national governments that have to self-report on that. But what's interesting, I think, is that there are areas there, and what we're doing in Kokoro is trying to translate that into actionable points for philanthropists and investors. It's not easy. I mean, the document's huge, but it's looking at where philanthropy and impact investing can come alongside public policy and enhance what's already been doing. So I am excited because the momentum is building, and I think soon-ish we will get there. But this is definitely an important point, and measures are already being taken around that.
Great. So what I would take away from your sort of initial statement is, we need to look at it holistically. Right, so we need to look at policy. We need to look at it bottom up as well. We need to increase the funding supply. We need to involve market mechanisms. Data matters because if we can't measure the improvements, it's difficult to target capital. So there's a lot of momentum, and that is an invitation, I think, for me to now look at at Brian. Brian, I know that when we talk about companies, SDGs, and so on. Clearly, we talk about the labor environment, the work environment as well. And, you're chairing the City Mental Health Alliance. I think it'd be very interesting for our participants today to learn more about the work that you do there, and also maybe help us understand, I think, good actions always start at home, start in the environments where we really have a direct impact that we control to some extent. How do you see the work environment side of improving, mental health?
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here. It's great to be here with my friend Natasha, who you can sense the energy from here. Very quickly, I got involved in the whole topic. I suffered difficulties with my mental health in my teenage years and as an early adult, and ended up having a spell in a psychiatric hospital. That was a while ago now, but since then, since 2006, as I have kind of grown through that experience, I came into contact when I was working actually at HSBC with the City Mental Health Alliance, and I've got the great privilege of being the current chairman. It is, for those people who are familiar with the UK, that the city includes sort of banks, insurance companies, asset managers, hedge funds, consultants, lawyers. So it's the sort of financial service industries. We have about 35 members in the UK, and the objective is to work together, put our commercial rivalries aside, and to work together with a very simple aim to help improve the mental health of our employees. So it's gone from strength to strength, Max. We're now opening city mental health chapters in Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia have already opened, in India, Portugal, and hopefully the US. We're about to announce some very exciting sort of sponsorship, and so it's really through that lens, my own personal experience and the work of the City Mental Health Alliance, what I've tried to do in my leadership roles is to try and remove the stigma, get chief executives, boards, chairmen to take the topic seriously, and I'd love to explore that, over the next few minutes and answer any questions as to how companies reflect the societies in which they operate. My observation in the UK is that 10 years ago, no one was talking about mental health at all. A few brave people have been speaking about it for some time. But with the catalyst of the pandemic, suddenly this is becoming an unbelievably important topic. It's always been an important topic, but we need to grasp this opportunity. Investment companies like Lansdowne, which I have the honor of leading, whether it's philanthropists like Natasha, whether it's advisors, clients, nothing is more important than an individual and their family's health. And I think we're making big progress, but from a very low level, and thinking about, mental, emotional and psychological health, as well as the more obvious physical health.
Thank you very much, Brian. I think, what I take away is, in addition to your passion and, for the topic, which I think is critical to move things forward, is platforms matter. We need to organize things and to collaborate, as Natasha does as well. And there's a role for initiative, personal leadership. What I'd like us to accomplish in the time that we have is, on the one hand, answer to questions of the audience. So that means if you have questions, please type them, because I will read them and I won't censor them, but let's see how far we get if you have a lot of questions. And secondly, I think it's important, and I think both of you made this point, it is about growing, in a sense, the group of individuals in their different environments who do something proactively intelligent about improving the state of mental health around the world. So that is really the role of advisors. As we know, Philanthropy Impact is really fundamentally a platform for advisors who then can inform and inspire their clients as well. So may I ask maybe a question to both of you? How do you think, when you think about your personal journeys in this space, you're leaders in this space, but maybe this wasn't always, so you weren't born leaders in this space, obviously. What role did advisors play, and where do you think could they have been helpful, or were they helpful? Because I think this is helpful for our audience here. Maybe we'll start with Natasha, if you'd like, and then also from Brian. This gives you also an opportunity. I know you're all multitaskers, to come up with your questions, so we have something to work with.
So I would say that, and thank you, Brian, for your honesty. I just wanted to say that you always inspire me with what your work and where what you're trying to do with the personal experience that you've had. Likewise, personal experience. My father had bipolar disorder and depression and died by suicide. So that's my motivation for getting into it. And to your point, Max, I often say that mental health was not what I aspired to do as a child, or what I wanted to get into. And I think that's why it's so important most of us have those stories and have either personal lived experience or have someone around it. And I will be completely honest. I mean, I've been in this space for sort of 10 years now, 8 years, and I didn't have that much influence from my advisors. It's happening now because more and more people are seeing the interlinks between some of the other issues like homelessness, gender, climate. I mean, if you speak to some of the next gen's activists that I interact with, they talk about eco-anxiety, So now that link is starting to be much more obvious. And so there are much more opportunities to invest. And my advisors have now, I've been speaking to them for so many years, and they see it, they have it, they all felt it, particularly since the pandemic. So I think it's becoming a much more open issue, both as a human and on the investment case, it makes a lot more sense. And I think there are a lot more opportunities now, and so they're bringing it more to the table, and we have much more discussions about it. I think everyone's a lot more developed in their thinking, but it's taken a long time to get here. So it would be a huge step forward, I think, if more advisors started taking that leadership role. It would be a dream of mine coming true.
So we could accelerate progress if we had more, if they stepped up. And I think that's an invitation to the crowd today as well. To you already actively taking an interest, but maybe you have colleagues who might take an interest as well if you if you bring them along. I
mean, if I may, they're almost like gatekeepers, and they're advisors. Exactly that. They have your best interests at heart. They help you with your strategy and this and that. So it's easy. It's an easy thing to do. So yes to taking up the challenge. Great.
We're starting to get in questions, and since I know from John that we have a really real cutoff, this is serious. We need to be using our time well. I'll simply read the question for Brian. So Brian, have any of your peers followed your lead, shared their experiences, and therefore supported staff as much as you have? And I think the underlying to this question is, of course, leading by example is extremely important. How much of that do you observe, and how can we help to make that happen?
Yeah, I think, again, in my role at the City Mental Health Alliance, I think there's been huge progress in society as a whole, but particularly in companies. So some of the things that we talk about a lot at the Alliance and is getting senior leaders to tell their stories. You've seen in the press and in a lot of interviews recently, a lot of very well-known leaders within companies and even in government and sport beginning to talk about their challenges. And within the City Mental Health Alliance specifically, all our members are really activating, proactively initiating a lot of programs within their companies, and then that feeds through to clients. So getting the board and the chief executive and the team taking it seriously, role modeling, communication, setting up mental health, first aid advisors, getting a lot more conversations going, teaching managers how to spot when colleagues are struggling, and many firms are beginning to talk to their clients. What could be more important when you're talking to a client, whether it's a ultra high net wealth individual or a family or I get kind of a bit annoyed when people talk about the difference between, clients, institutional clients and private banking clients. They're all people. So you are a person, you're speaking to a person, whatever that person's role in the company they're speaking to. They might be the principal, they might be the CIO, they might be the part of the team, but I think that the best business people listen, the best business people understand their clients, and the best business people, I think, are very open and authentic. How can you build a trusting relationship with someone if you don't understand them and they don't trust you? So it's wonderful that things are beginning to be talked about. But frankly, it's shocking that it hasn't been spoken about before. And anyone who has had any problems with mental health know that you can't possibly be at your best if you are struggling with mental health problems. So as a leader, it's pretty obvious that anything you can do to make your colleagues or the people who you have the responsibility of leading feeling more secure or financially strong, psychologically strong, is going to improve the performance of your company. So my old boss at HSBC, John Flint, who was the CEO of HSBC, in his first day said, as the CEO of HSBC, he wanted HSBC to have the healthiest human system in financial services. He believed it was a duty of care for the CEO to look after the people who he was responsible for. And he'd also done a lot of work and reading and analysis to show that those companies that took their people seriously, their human capital seriously, would outperform those that don't. So and again, I've been fortunate enough to have managed to overcome the difficulties I've had. But anyone who has had, and there will be many people on this call who have had or have currently problems with their mental health, you know how debilitating it can be. So anything that we can do to improve people's mental health is going to be beneficial in all sorts of wonderful ways.
You know, I thank you very much for this inspiring contribution. I think what I take away from it is, you know, leadership matters, and it's important to give spaces, you know, for people such as yourself who lead on the issue to come forward, inspire others, because we need to simply sort of infect in a positive sense. We just need more of a momentum. At the same time, I think we need to also recognize that, you know, more needs to be done essentially to legitimize and to you know, remove the taboo around mental health. And I think that is probably the biggest challenge that we have. That said, I think, you know, with a lot of smart and committed human beings around this and other tables, I have no doubt it can be done. Now, the challenge that I see John has put himself on is that we will finish very shortly. So I'd like to simply conclude by saying three things. One, John, I think you, Raquel and Sophia were toying with the idea of having another installment of this later. I have to tell you, I'd like to invite all the participants, if you want to have more, to write to John and his colleagues, because then there will be more, you know, it's demand driven. Point one is I think we need more time. Point two, I mean, I work across topics, across issues, and my view personally is, you know, if you look, for example, at organizations such as a movement such as Fridays for Future, I mean, you can like or not like it, but one thing's for sure, it's changed the debate, it's changed the level of policy engagement, the level of company engagement, the world of investments. And I think with an issue that is as important and foundational to our well-being in a world that is complex, you know, we have less and less personal interaction, I think we need to be similarly ambitious. And I think philanthropists can help catalyze the emergence of some aspects of that, be it on the technical solutions side, be it on funding social movements. There's a lot to be done. And I think, you know, with Natasha and Brian, we see two individuals who actually do that in practice. So I encourage you to basically, you know, bring your parts to the table. I think we can achieve a lot more. We need to be ambitious. It's possible. And with that, I hand over to John.
Max, thanks. That was absolutely brilliant. I'm going to ask Brian and Natasha for final words of wisdom in a second. But having just got out of the hospital with coronavirus and having all the supports around me, not just from my family, but from the people I work with and from our board, brilliant example of how to survive, because it's just not a physical issue. It's also a mental issue to work your way through. So thank you for this. The other thing I thought was really interesting point was the role of people's concern about climate and how that's adding to mental health issues, and how there's a need for funding for dealing with mental health issues, but also if you can combine it with the funding for environment and stuff, you can have a double whammy and stuff. So Natasha, thank you for making that point. I think we barely scratched the surface, and Max, we don't need people to write to us. We will put on a webinar in the new year. So thank you. So final words of wisdom, 30 seconds. Brian, over to you.
Yeah, I think there's so much to talk about, but I think that the couple of things I would say is that, you know, I think that society's made huge progress in the last 10, 20, 30 years about some really important topics, whether it's, you know, gender or sexuality, race, etc. But mental health still has a huge stigma. It's going to vary from different individuals to different families, different countries, but it is the most crucial thing in all of our lives. And I'm so excited about the potential, how it can unleash unbelievable happiness, unleash people who for years have felt it very difficult to contribute to society. So I think that it is, this is going to sound a little bit weird, but a few brave people were talking about this before coronavirus. Now with coronavirus, hopefully beginning, despite John's horrific experience, to let's just take this opportunity to be brave at an individual and at a commercial corporate level. And I just say, ask people how they're doing. Look out for people who may be struggling, and you could just save someone's life.
Our board has been brilliant through this whole process, and they're all mostly professional advisors and stuff. So it's a good example, Brian. So thank you for that. Natasha, you get the final word.
Oh dear, pressure's on, John. I would say mental health is health. We all have it. We all deserve to have the support we need. And I will finish with an amazing quote that one of my colleagues in Australia once told me: money for the mind is money we can't afford not to find. So that's my call to action. Please, everyone, step in and do your part, because we got to address this crisis.
Okay, great. And Max, do you have 30 seconds, or do you want to just have any final?
Look, I want to thank John, thank you and Philanthropy Impact for once more, being proactive, forward-looking for this, to put this on and to put on more on mental health, because I think, if we look at the progression, indeed, I think Brian is right. This used to be a super taboo topic. It's still a taboo topic, but I think we're now moving into a space where there's enough awareness, there's enough data as well, there's critical funding in place, that we can really, really move to the next level in terms of finding solutions. And we just can't just do it, we must do it. So, thank you for the opportunity to inspire together.
Max, Brian, Natasha, thank you very much. It was really inspiring. So over to you, Sophie.
Yeah, I'll echo John. Thank you. That was really great. It's left me with a load more questions that I think that we need to answer. So we'll definitely be curating another event, probably an hour-long one. If you are willing to participate, that would be great. I'm now going to announce we are still doing this, so we'll be back next Monday, even though John has had coronavirus. We're back with old and new forms of giving. Sorry, I had to read a paper then to find it out. But have a great week, everybody, and I hope to see you next Monday. Thanks.